All right, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually paint the mortar in. Um, so for this, you're going to need your smaller brush, um, whatever smaller brush you have that you've been working with. Um, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to mix up kind of a light gray. Um, your mortar color is not, they make mortar in colors, in different colors. So, and there's also just, what kind of aging and whatnot that comes along with it. So there's no like singular uh, mortar color that your mortar should be. Some of it's a little cooler, some of it's a little warmer, sometimes it's a little greener. So if you're having trouble making a mortar color that you like, consider putting a little bit of green in it. I like something that's a little beigey for a lot of things. I find it accents the brick nicely. Um, but you want to go ahead and mix up some kind of a gray that you think will stand out against your brick. You don't want it too poppy. If it's too obvious, then it starts to become cartoony. Unless you want it to be cartoony, that's the other thing. But also not necessarily too dark and consistent, because then it'll just disappear. You don't want either of those things. So what I've got going on in here is um, kind of a dark, medium, warm gray. I would describe that. So that's what you're going for. And then what I usually do is, because I normally don't have the pencil lines, I normally do the horizontals all first. So you're going to come in here and you're just going to give yourself, I'm getting a little overly thick with this one. Thought I had a different brush, but all right. So you want kind of a nice consistent line across there. Um, if you can thin it out a little bit, that'd be great. Although we do end up putting some shadow over that as well. So just do the best you can. It's like lining between the barn boards, same idea. Once you have all of your horizontals in, then you go back and you do your verticals. Now, when you do your verticals, use your straight edge and do an entire row at a time. That helps keep everything consistent. A good bricklayer is going to make sure that those lines are nice and straight. So if for some reason you're doing something where you want it to look like it was done by an awful bricklayer, or like it was done in the 1970s when terrible brickwork was actually kind of fashionable, then you can do whatever you want. But what I'm trying to get done here for my stuff is just a um, nice even uh, mortar line. Um, you don't want it to be, you don't want your paint so thin that it doesn't show up, but you don't want it so thick that it doesn't flow either. So um, work with the consistency of your paint. I don't know if I said this in the last one or not, but I think that's been one of the biggest uh, parts of my discovery of what works for me as a scene painter, is trying to figure out what the how the thickness consistency of my paint affects the work that I'm doing. So once you have all of these in, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, then I'm going to go through, and everywhere that I had those verticals, um, I'm going to go ahead and paint these in. You want to be careful that you don't overrun your ends. So I'm starting and stopping right on my other mortar, because that'll be a dead giveaway. If you have a little notch into your brick where you don't have a brick, then it's a big tell that you painted this. Not that people aren't going to know that it's painted, but um, you don't want them to have to think about it. So as best you can, make sure you're starting and stopping on the existing thing. This one got a little wiggly. We'll go back and fix that with the highlight and shadow step. And as I said, these are getting, my mortar on this with this brush is a little thicker than I'd like it to be. So if yours is a little thinner, you're probably doing it more like what I had in mind, but we're all working with what we've got. So I'm going to let you guys do that. And when you've got all your mortar in, go ahead and put your hands up and we'll move on from there. Hands down for now, and let's go ahead.